Oh. Good morning, this is Madeline.
Good morning everyone, this is Mike.
And we're starting off by reading the Society News. On next Tuesday, which will be the 1st of August, a coffee morning will be held in support of the Society at Knighton Post Office, starting at 10:15 until 12. The Dolphin Swimming Group will meet at the Waterside Pool in Ryde on Tuesday, and the swimming starts at 8 p.m. The group has sole use of the pool for this session, and lifeguards are present while the group are swimming. If you wish to join, please call the Society first to advise us of your level of swimming ability. On Wednesday, there are no Society coffee mornings or Macular Degeneration Society coffee mornings during August. The coffee mornings will resume on Wednesday, the 6th of September. Also, the Owls won't be meeting during August. The group will resume their meetings on the 13th of September, where the group will have a talk on the Isle of Wight Steam Railway. Also, for Thursday, the Knitters and Natterers won't be meeting during August, and they will resume on Thursday, the 7th of September. And some other news. There will be a bucket collection in the Co-op store in Newport this Saturday, that's the 29th, from 10 o'clock until 1. Please stop and have a chat with the volunteers manning the stand and show your support for the Society. The Knitters and Natterers will be going on an outing on Thursday the 24th of August to Core Abbey for lunch. There are still a limited number of available seats on the minibus. If you are interested in going and would like to join the group, please contact the Society as soon as possible on 522205. The Owls will be going on their summer outing to Ventnor Botanical Gardens on the 16th of August during the afternoon, and there are still spaces available on this trip. The cost for the trip will be £9.50 per person, and that includes entry to the garden, an escorted guided tour of approximately 1 hour, a hot drink and a slice of cake in the cafe. So if you would like to go with the Owls to the Botanic Gardens, please call the Society, again on 522205, by Thursday the 10th of August at the latest. And sorry, this week Island Roads haven't sent any scaffolding news, so there's nothing to report on that. And finally, this week's In Touch. In this week's episode, a look at the range of specialist and non-specialist gadgets available for identifying objects and travelling around. Joining Peter to share their experiences of solutions offered by technology are guests Jackie Brown, the incoming chair of the British Computer Association for the Blind, and Dave Williams, a freelance trainer on technology.
We now move on to the headlines for the Isle of Wight County Press for the 28th of July 2017. Tonsil operation tragedy of Caleb, and 20 jobs under threat at the college. The tonsil op tragedy of Caleb, a boy who survived liver transplant as a toddler, dies aged 4. He survived a liver transplant when he was just 16 months old, but at 4 years old a routine tonsil operation ended the life of a family's happy little boy. Caleb Smith underwent a liver transplant when he was 16 months old after being born with liver disease. The former Haylands Primary School pupil responded well to the transplant, but his medication left him open to infections, and he suffered 5 bouts of tonsillitis in 2016. With the size of his tonsils causing sleep apnea problems, he was sent to Southampton General Hospital for an operation on March the 23rd. But Caleb took a turn for the worse shortly after the surgery, and parents, Chloe and Jeff Smith of Ryde, were told the devastating news he wasn't going to make it. His life support machine was turned off the next day. An investigation into Caleb's death is taking place. Chloe, aged 32, who gave birth to another son, Eli, on April the 28th, said, "It was unbearable. It was a terrible dream we couldn't wake up from. Caleb was a happy little boy. He loved superheroes and playing with cars on the floor, and he was very sociable and had lots of friends. Having Eli has been a really positive thing for us and has given us something to focus on, but, of course, there's sadness that Caleb's not here to meet his younger brother. We will remember Caleb every day and make sure Eli knows his big brother. We will keep his memory alive. We've had lots of support from True Vine Church in Newport. We trust in God that he will get us through this. Haylands Primary has planted a tree in memory of Caleb, and Cat You Are Pillars Children's Group, Shanklin, held a fundraising picnic in his honour.
20 jobs and a threat at college. Just weeks after getting one of the best Ofsted reports in its sector in the country, the Isle of Wight College has announced 20 job losses. It is first looking for early retirements, voluntary redundancies, and for people to reduce their hours before considering compulsory job losses across the board among 300 employees. "We are restructuring as we do every year," said Assistant Principal Peter Thompson. "We, like others in the post-16 sector on the island, are being affected by falling student numbers. But unlike other colleges, we run a balanced budget as we have for the past 4 years. You don't work in a college unless you understand the reality of the financial world in which we live. We are not recording deficits, and neither are we making a big surplus either. We are achieving our aim of keeping on an even keel, and restructuring is part of that. It is unfortunate this comes after we received an Ofsted report which was just a whisker from outstanding, but morale remains high."
Victoria initiative to increase tourism. Tourists will be encouraged to visit the Isle of Wight and experience Victoria's Island in a new £200,000 Visit Isle of Wight campaign. Its launch on August the 15th will coincide with the nationwide cinema release of Victoria and Abdul. The film, based on the real-life relationship between Queen Victoria and her Indian servant, Abdul Karim, stars Academy Award winner Judi Dench and was partially filmed at Osborne House last year. A Welcome to Victoria's Island archway has already been installed at the Red Funnels car ferry terminal in Southampton, depicting actors from the movie, alongside images of famous locations on the island. The campaign will then continue with digital, social media and advertising across the UK, and it hopes to put the Victoria's Island message in front of more than 20 million people between August and October. A leaflet will encourage visitors to follow a heritage trail, highlighting 12 locations of significance for Queen Victoria, including Osborne House and St Mildred's Church at Whippingham. Tourist members have been slowly increasing on the island, reversing the steady decline between 1981 and 2013. Visit Isle of Wight hopes to continue this growth and aims to attract 3 million visitors to the island annually within the next 5 years. Visit Isle of Wight Chief Executive David Thornton said, "The message we want to get across is for people to come visit the island. It takes a while to increase tourist numbers. Holidaymakers are already in love with other parts of the country, and we have to slowly convince them of all the Isle of Wight has to offer."
Temporary closure of alpaca attraction. West Wight Alpacas has temporarily closed after some of its animals were potentially exposed to bacteria. The Wellow business said a small number of animals might have been exposed to a microbacterium, and the closure was a precautionary measure. There was minimal risk to visitors and no risk to neighbouring houses, the company said. The Llama Tree Bistro and the Yarn Barn gift shop remain open to the public. A spokesperson said, "Although at this stage the bacterium is not confirmed, we are working together with our vet and the National Farmers Union, and we feel a period of closure is the best decision. The government's Animal and Plant Health Agency is aware of the situation and has not asked us to close. The course of action we have chosen is a precaution only."
Town hit by vandalism. Police on the island are conducting 20 investigations into a spree of vandalism to cars, criminal damage to a shop, thefts from cars and antisocial behaviour in East Cowes at the weekend. The police received several reports from victims of a crime spree in the town on Saturday night through the early hours of Sunday. The incidents happened in Connaught Road, York Avenue, Princess Close, Gort Avenue, Sylvan Avenue and Clarence Road, among others. The reports were of damage to motor vehicles, from wing mirrors and number plates to bodywork, as well as the theft of items from cars, criminal damage to the window of a co-op store and antisocial behaviour by 2 youths who were seen in the area. Detectives are reviewing CCTV footage, taking statements from victims and making house-to-house inquiries. If anyone witnessed any of the incidents or has information useful to the police, call Hampshire Constabulary on 101, quoting the crime reference number 441 702 82894.
Unloading impossible after fault. Vehicles parked on the upper car deck of Red Funnel's Red Osprey were unable to disembark on Tuesday morning because of a hydraulic fault with the link span ramp at the Southampton terminal. It affected the 7:15 a.m. East Cowes to Southampton sailing, which was forced to dock at a different berth in the city to allow foot passengers and lower deck vehicles to disembark. Those stuck on the upper car deck were taken back to East Cowes, arriving 3 hours later. Gemma Marie Burgess of Arreton, who had travelled with her 2 children to visit relatives, said, "We arrived in Southampton on time, but the ferry was unable to dock. Halfway there, Red Funnel said vehicles on the upper deck would be unable to get off. They took cars off the lower deck and loaded more on. We arrived back in East Cowes at 10:30 a.m, but due to Red Funnel reversing and turning cars to get them off the ferry, we didn't get off ourselves until 11 a.m. Delays continued into the evening, with normal service resumed at 9 p.m, and Red Funnel apologised for the delays and inconvenience."
I think we're continuing that story a little. Passengers evicted from ferry's luxury lounge. Disgruntled families with young children stormed the Red Funnel First Class lounge during a packed Solent crossing in an attempt to find somewhere for their children to sit. Saturday's 9:30 a.m. crossing to Southampton was so busy, travellers were left standing in corridors and stairwells, while the Signature Lounge luxury cabin, which cost an extra £10 per person, housed just a handful of people. Julia Kingston of Ryde, who was travelling with her husband, son, daughter-in-law and 5-year-old twin grandchildren on a trip to Legoland, said, "Our group paid £100 for the crossing and couldn't find anywhere to sit, while the Signature Lounge was virtually empty. It was just diabolical. There were families everywhere and young children standing at the top of stairs. One little girl scalded herself by spilling a hot drink." Red Funnel's money-making exercises comes before health and safety. Julia spoke to Red Funnel staff asking if their children could sit in the Signature Lounge, but when she was refused, her family and 3 or 4 other groups went in anyway and sat down. before being told to pay the extra £10 or leave. When you pay that much for a ticket, you are not going to want to pay another £10 each, Julia said. A Red Funnel spokesperson said, utilisation of the new Signature Lounge is ahead of expectations, and the feedback from guests who have used it has been overwhelmingly positive.
Churches fair game for theft. A spate of thefts at 3 village churches has met with dismay by the parish priest. The donation boxes at St Mary's Bryston, St Peter's Shorewell and St Peter and St Paul's Mottiston, where Sherlock actor Benedict Cumberbatch was married, were raided in just one day. Interim parish priest, the Reverend Linda Bushell, said it was upsetting churches were considered fair game by thieves. We've been caught so many times we keep very little money in the donation boxes. It's really not worth their while, she said. One girl, a single parent, gave me a donation and said it was all she had, and that has been taken from us. The money isn't the issue, though. It should be safe to keep churches open for visitors. At one time this wouldn't have happened, but we seem to be fair game now. A lot of people still have respect and churches are still held in esteem, but I suppose not everyone feels they are sacred. Following the thefts on June the 29th, the broken donation boxes have been replaced. Police have arrested a 38-year-old man who has been released and remains under investigation. Enquiries are ongoing and anyone with information can call police on 101.
Danger of beach gully warning. A deep gully on one of the island's most popular beaches could cost a child's life, it has been claimed. Social media carried warnings from worried parents following the channel appearing early this week. They were concerned unwary paddlers at high tide would be unaware the normally gently sloping sands suddenly turned from shallow to deeper water. One comment from Nikki Hill on Facebook described the gully as very dangerous. With big tides at the moment, a small child could easily be swept away, she wrote. Councillor Wayne Whittle, whose business looks out over the sand, said, "The Environment Agency is caught between the devil and the deep blue sea. If the agency didn't dig the sand away from the Monkton Mead outfall, it would be blamed if people's homes were flooded. I would urge people to be aware and take care until the sand returns to normal." The Isle of Wight Council said it was investigating the cause of the gully and what to do about it. An Environment Agency spokesman said the gully had been caused by tides and winds, and there had been no change in its sand clearance, which took place each week or fortnight. This week, the Environment Agency has lodged 2 planning applications to further reduce flooding risk as part of its multi-million-pound RIDE programme. One reroutes the Monkton Mead outfall into Ryde Harbour and should be complete in the summer of 2018. The other creates flood walls along the brook's banks and raises part of Simeon Street recreation ground.
Appeal over assault. Police are appealing for witnesses after a 36-year-old man was assaulted by another man in Sandown last Friday. The incident took place at about 10:15 p.m. on the High Street at the junction with St John's Road. The victim was treated at St Mary's Hospital for minor injuries. The suspect is described as between 45 years old and late 40s, tall and with a large stocky build. He had short, mousy brown hair and was wearing a dark red jumper or hoodie and dark trousers. He was with a woman who is described as in her mid-40s, about 5 feet 8 inches tall and with a large build. She was possibly blonde with her hair in a ponytail and was wearing dark trousers and a pink frilly top. Witnesses have described someone taking a photograph of the suspect. The police say they need to identify this person. He was not involved in the assault and they would like him to come forward. If anyone has any information about this incident, they can call 101, quoting 441 702 81310.
Officers green light for Ride School plan. Controversial plans for the development of the 3-storey boarding house at Ride School have been recommended for approval, despite more than 50 objections from residents. The plans for school playing fields include accommodation for 68 pupils and staff, new netball courts, landscaping and remodelling of existing access routes from Spencer Road. Concerns were raised regarding the impact on the conservation area, loss of privacy for neighbouring properties, impact on rides, land and seascape, and the effect on wildlife. However, the school said it had responded to council officers, Sports England and residents' concerns and made changes to the plan. The officer recommendation was met with dismay from protest group Ride Against Boarding House, which dubbed it a retrograde step. A group spokesman said all conservation areas are protected by law and any development must enhance their character. It is very hard to see how the introduction of this building, which is of an institutional, functional and modern appearance and houses 68 inhabitants, can have a positive effect on this area with its many Grade 2 listed properties. This would arguably be the biggest development in this part of Ryde for over 100 years and would undoubtedly dominate and diminish the conservation area. A Ryde school spokesman said the boarding house had been designed to a high specification using high quality materials to give a visually appealing appearance. A tree planting scheme and green wall would further enhance the site.
Let's look at what a fixed link can do. An independent study into the costs and benefits of a fixed link to the island is needed, according to a report into the Isle of Wight's transport needs. A cross-Solent operators partnership board should be formed so ferry firms and stakeholders could work for their mutual benefit and for the economic well-being of the island, the report stated. The report by the Independent Transport Infrastructure Task Force, or the TITF, was commissioned in November 2014 and looks into the infrastructure challenges on the island. Chaired by transport expert Christopher Garnett, the TITF has met with more than 40 organisations over the past 8 months. In the report, Mr. Garnett said, "As is to be expected, a lot of issues were raised, but the overriding issue was in relation to the service that the cross-Solent operators provide for the island. The island is an unusual position in that all the operators who provide the cross-Solent service are in the private sector and have no public service obligation and no service contract with the local authority. With a population of nearly 140,000, the island is by far the largest island in the UK not connected by a road bridge. The island does get a good service, but for some, the fares are high and in some important respects, it does not provide the island with the service it needs."
Man is jailed for cabbie robbery, and a judge urges the addict to fight drugs demons. Daniel Raymond Dickinson, aged 25, of Trinity Road, Ventnor, was jailed for 4 years after he admitted robbing Russell Marchbank of his £56 takings, two mobile phones and a wallet on May the 3rd. The Isle of Wight Crown Court heard Dickinson had only recently been released from prison for offences of violence and criminal damage. David Jenkins, prosecuting, said Dickinson grabbed a bag of cash from the front seat when Mr. Marchbank was distracted by a call before producing a craft knife. Fearing he would be stabbed, Mr. Marchbank handed over his mobile phones and wallet containing £35. Dickinson, who had 34 convictions for 66 offences, including thefts, burglaries and violence, had caught the taxi en ride and carried out the robbery when they arrived at Windmill Close in Cowes. Mr. Jenkins said the incident had affected Mr. Marchbank emotionally and was now worried about who may be in his taxi. Representing Dickinson, Uomi Davis said her client had drug problems, describing them as the demon behind his offending behaviour. She said her client was embarrassed and ashamed of his actions and had expressed remorse. Sentencing the father of one, Judge John Price said, "In your letter you say you are a disgrace as a person and a father. I agree. But if you continue to make progress to get off drugs, that's good. The only people who win are the drug dealers, and you're the loser. This is an extremely serious offence which affected the taxi driver mentally."
Service charges up at Pan Meadows. Pan Meadows residents have been hit by a huge hike in service charges. Householders have received a £200 bill for maintaining and landscaping the Newport development, an increase from £137 2 years ago. The Pan Management Company, or Manco, which manages the estate, said costs had been underestimated in the past, and following a fresh assessment of running costs, now reflected actual expenditure. But residents have questioned why the charges had increased at all, given more people had moved in to share the burden, and said some areas were poorly maintained regardless. A Pan Manco spokesman said, "We do anticipate a future realignment of costs when there are more residents." Ward Councillor Jeff Brodie said he had received many emails and phone calls from annoyed residents, some of whom asked why they were being charged more when Pan Manco's reserves had doubled to more than £80,000. He said, "Dealing with Pan Manco in recent times has been immensely trying. I have reached the end of my patience with them and have decided to publicise all of this instead." Several weeks after a meeting when Pan Manco agreed to meet with residents to explain the increases and apologised for branding Councillor Brodie overzealous in an email, he said nothing had been done. One resident, who asked not to be named, told the county press, "It's just so hard to get any information. They are useless." The Pan Manco spokesman said, "We are always happy to meet with residents to discuss any concerns and questions they have, and we are keen to arrange a meeting. In the past we have had regular meetings with Councillor Brodie, and we are keen to reinstate these." He said reserves shown were higher than in the past because of a change in accounting procedure.
Cyclist says, "Helmet saved my life." I used to be one of those people who didn't wear a helmet. I'm quite sure I wouldn't be here if I wasn't wearing one on Sunday. This was the horrifying wake-up call an island man received when he was knocked off his bike, leaving him unconscious, with gashes and grazes all over his face and body. After the incident on Sandham Road at Yaverland, Paul Richards, aged 47, is convinced he owes his life to a £40 helmet, and he is adamant other people get the message. He said, "I was doing less than 20 miles per hour, so not fast. I was one of those people who was nagged into wearing a helmet, and I just want to pass it on. If it helps someone else not end up in a box." British Gas Service manager Paul does not remember the incident which left him unconscious, but he was found by a passer-by before he was taken to St Mary's Hospital, Newport, by a friend. I feel quite guilty because when I came round there was a man helping me, so I'm very grateful, but I do remember not thanking him because I was a bit out of it, said Paul from Shanklin. The keen cyclist was in training for this weekend's 100-mile Prudential Ride London-Surrey event, which, despite his injuries, he still intends to participate in. The father, who has a daughter, Molly, and 3 stepchildren, added, "How many times do you see a family out for a cycle and the kids have got helmets on, but the parents haven't? The kids learn by example, and although they're wearing them, when they grow up and make the choice, then they're not going to do that." Paul will be raising money for disability charity Scope, and he can be sponsored. The sponsorship details are www.justgiving.com/fundraising/Paul Richards 54.
Regatta brings extended floating bridge service. Extra floating bridge sailings are taking place during the early hours in Lendy Cows Week. Over the past fortnight, the floating bridge has stopped at 10:30 p.m. due to noise levels, but due to increased demand during Cows Week, extra sailings have been scheduled. From today until next Friday, the floating bridge will run from 5 a.m. until 1:50 a.m. There will be extra crossings at 20-minute intervals from each side of the River Medina every night, with the final sailing from Cowes at 3:10 a.m. As usual on fireworks night, the floating bridge will operate as a foot passenger only service from 6 p.m. to 11 p.m. Due to expected demand, the Isle of Wight Council has advised people to buy tickets in advance. Councillor Ian Ward, Cabinet Member for Transport and Infrastructure, said, "Lendy Cows Week is an important event in the island's calendar. It is a chance to showcase our island and attract visitors to our shores. It is important we provide a good floating bridge service during this period, while we remain within the commissioning phase of the new floating bridge. But it is equally important we take into consideration the issues raised by residents about noise from the new vessel's operation." Isle of Wight Council bosses were confronted at a packed meeting of East Cowes Town Council last week as anger persisted among residents over the blundering floating bridge number 6. Criticism has been levelled against the day-to-day operation and design of the new bridge. Isle of Wight Council leader Councillor Dave Stewart and Chief Executive John Metcalfe came under fire as residents criticised the contract to build the new bridge and called for those responsible to be named and shamed. A spokeswoman for protest group Floaty McFloat Farce called for an independent engineering audit. She said, "We are having issues. It is functioning, but it is not fully functional. There may be things that cannot be fixed." Councillor Stewart ruled out an engineering audit, saying the council would conduct a 6-month review. He added problems with the last floating bridge had been highlighted when it came into service in 1976. "This is not the first time issues have arisen," he said.
New governors brought into Academy by AET. A new board of governors has been appointed at Ryde Academy. However, unlike their Sandown Bay Academy counterparts, who were sacked in light of the challenging environment at the school, the existing Ryde governors have been told they can remain if they wish. AET, which runs both schools, denied it was punishing them for speaking out against plans to close Sandown and merge it with Ryde. It has nothing to do with their views on the merger. It's an AET-wide restructure, said Regional Director Jonathan Swasmares. AET was following the advice of School Systems Minister Lord Nash, who has called for more effective boards comprising skilled and experienced education professionals, he said. The new Ryde board will be chaired by former Hampshire and Isle of Wight Council Education Officer turned AET advisor Steve Cotterill. Members will include principals from other AET academies, including former Medina College head Nathan Thomas. Mr. de Soismares said the change would enable RIDE to benefit from closer links with AET's other schools. Concerns have been raised by a source at RIDE Academy board members on the AET payroll would be less likely to hold the academy chain to account, and local accountability would suffer if the current governors had less influence.
Desperate stepdad told to wait for ferry. Desperate to get to his stepson's bedside as he fought for his life, Tim Crop was told by Whitelink he would have to join the queue at Yarmouth and hope to get a space on the ferry. In response to his complaints, the ferry company said it was now reviewing its procedures and as a gesture of goodwill had given him a partial refund. Shocked at the news of the attack on his stepson, Robert Holden, Mr. Crop, 59 from Fort Warden Road, Totland, phoned the ferry company's booking office at 10:25 a.m. on Saturday, hoping to get on the next ferry. I was told the computer system could not take a booking for the 11:05 a.m. sailing. I would just have to turn up and hope there was a space. I was desperate to get to Robert's bedside as soon as I could because at that time I had been told it was 50-50 whether he would live, said Tim. He said the final insult was having to pay £94 for a one-way crossing after being quoted nearly £200 for an open return ticket because he did not know when he would be back on the island. But the main thing is there should be an emergency system in place where bookings office can simply ring the terminal, he said. A Whitelink spokesman said bookings automatically closed to enable ferry loads to be configured, but shore staff had the ability to use their discretion in emergencies.
Ambulance staff receive recognition. Ambulance staff with a collective record of more than 600 years' service to the NHS were recognised at a special ceremony. The celebration was held at Lakeside Hotel, Wootton Bridge, last Thursday. Isle of Wight Lord Lieutenant Major General Martin White and Isle of Wight NHS Trust Interim Chief Executive Maggie Oldham presented the awards. Staff received the Long Service and Good Conduct Medal. A Long Service Medal established in 1995 and awarded to members serving on emergency duty for 20 years or more. Excuse me. It is only awarded to ambulance technicians, paramedics and ambulance officers. Ambulance service officers must have served at least 7 years on emergency duty. A call handler and a dispatcher within the ambulance service, Christine Martin and Michelle Cassell, received glass plaques engraved with the Isle of Wight Ambulance Service crest to honour their long service. Chris Smith, Head of Ambulance and Clinical Director for Ambulance Urgent Care and Community Services at the Trust, said, "This is a fantastic achievement showing the dedication and loyalty of staff, recognition which is long overdue. Some of the incidents these staff have attended have been difficult to talk about, so I'm pleased we have been able to recognise their service in this way."
Quackers race for Brook Hall. A record crowd turned up to the Brook Rubber Duck Derby in the village on Sunday to raise funds for the Seeley Hall. Around 250 people attended the fun event, which included a Decorate Your Duck competition, children's games, a bouncy castle and refreshments. Organiser Roy Haviland of the Seeley Hall Committee said, "I estimate we have made £1,100 towards the running costs of the hall. We had a record turnout for the 21 duck races in the stream, which featured junior and adult events. It's very much a village event and everyone helps out. so the community has the opportunity to come together and help raise funds for a good cause. I'd like to thank the volunteers who give up so much of their time to help us out, and my wife Jill, who isn't on the committee, but again helps to make this such a success year after year.
Mayors slam East Cowes proposal. Plans to build homes and a supermarket on Isle of Wight council land at East Cowes have been condemned by former and serving mayors. As previously reported, proposals have been unveiled to build 58 homes on land at Crossways Road. 24 would be affordable homes, and there will be 24 flats for social housing, plus a supermarket such as Aldi or Lidl. However, at a town council meeting last Thursday, former Mayor, Councillor Jane Rann, claimed East Cowes was being picked on by the Isle of Wight Council, while current Mayor, Councillor Peter Lloyd, said he believed the town did not need new housing at Crossways. He said, "They have not completed Hawthorne Meadows yet. We have not got school places, we have not got doctors and dentists, and it would divide the town completely in two. You would have a Waitrose side and an Aldi side, and the shops in between would disappear." Councillor Carl Love said, "The needs of the community outweighed the commercial advantages of the project." He said, "It will have a huge impact on the commercial centre. We have one road in and one road out. The consultation should have been started years ago by the then council, so we as a community could have had time to form our opinions on a proper basis. It splits the town in terms of shopping and will bring in a lot more traffic from Wootton." Members agreed to have a public meeting to discuss the proposals in greater detail.
Free Willie from care home plea. Retired Fleet Street journalist Willie Poole remains marooned in a nursing home costing council taxpayers £1,000 a week because the Isle of Wight Council has been unable to put a care package in place for him. The trouble for 77-year-old Willie, who was awarded the MBE for his services to journalism, started 2 months ago when he had a minor fall at his Newport home. And for most of the time since then, the hard-pressed adult social care budget has been picking up the tab for his care his wife says he does not want or need. His wife Susie, 78, who desperately wants her husband of 45 years home, said, "He spent 2 weeks in St Mary's Hospital and was transferred to the Elms nursing home in Bembridge. Since then, everyone seems to want him to return home, but no one seems able to achieve it. It was easier in the film Free Willy to release a whale than get my husband home. The problem is he's getting no physiotherapy and he is in an environment where lots of the residents are suffering from dementia, and that is doing him no good at all. Our home in Newport is already specially adapted to suit Willie's needs, so that can't be standing in the way of him coming back." But an Isle of Wight Council spokesman said, "Upon discharge to the Elms, Mr Poole was assessed as needing an intensive package of care in order to be able to return home, which has unfortunately been difficult to attain."
A royal visitor to Cowes Week. Princess Anne will visit the Isle of Wight during Cowes Week. The Princess Royal will spend 2 days at the world-famous sailing regatta on Monday and Tuesday. As president of Riding for the Disabled, she will also visit the Isle of Wight Riding for the Disabled organisation at Osborne House. She will visit the offices of Cowes Week Limited, attend a reception at the Royal London Yacht Club and have dinner at the Royal Yacht Squadron. During the second day, she will start the Triple Crown yacht race from the Royal Yacht Squadron battlements and visit Youth Sailing Academy UKSA, of which she is patron. The Isle of Wight's Lord Lieutenant Major General Martin White said, "I am very pleased to welcome back to the island HRH. particularly during Cows Week, when she will also have an opportunity to see other aspects of life in our community.
And that's all we have time for today, so it's goodbye from Madeline.
And it's goodbye from Mike. Bye-bye, everyone. Bye-bye.
Good morning, everyone. This is the County Press, and Barry reading it with
Sonara.
And we have the first letter, which is from Ian Pratt of Ryde. According to my view, Malcolm Mime wants to ban all religions. Normally, people who are against religions have had a bad experience previously in their life with one religion or another. However, there is a danger of throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Whether Mr. Mime likes it or not, we in the United Kingdom have a Christian heritage stretching back for centuries, to which we owe so much. For example, schools, universities, hospitals, human rights, and the abolition of slavery, in fact our democracy itself. In a speech in 2012, the former Prime Minister David Cameron said, "The Bible has helped to shape the values which define our country. Indeed, as Margaret Thatcher once said, we are a nation whose ideals are founded on the Bible. Responsibility, hard work, charity, compassion, humility, self-sacrifice, love, pride in working for the common good, and honouring the social obligations we have to one another, to our families and our communities. These are the values we treasure. Yes, they are Christian values, and we should not be afraid to acknowledge that. But they are also values that speak to us all, to people of every faith and none, and I believe we should all stand up and defend them. I believe if you were to remove Christianity from our nation, there would only be a dark and empty shell left. Is that really what anyone who cares about our society wants?"
And the second letter from Mr. and Mrs. Marriott of Ryde. Time for a change of motto, Ryde School. As you may or may not be aware, Ryde could lose part of its conservation area under concrete, affecting a green and pleasant area to the northwest of Ryde. The proposed 3-storey monster boarding house for Ryde School students will affect neighbours and wildlife alike. Once this green land is gone, it's gone forever and becomes another blot on the landscape. In late 2016, Ryde School sought pre-application advice from the Isle of Wight Council on their proposal. The planning officer considered this and provided the following feedback. It was agreed during our site meeting that it was very likely a 2-storey dormitory building could be accommodated in the area indicated in your letter. This area was considered to be the least intrusive visually and would have least impact on the existing playing fields. You will need to consider how the size, scale and position of any building here would relate to existing development, the use of the playing fields, but also on the setting of existing listed buildings and the character, appearance and setting of the conservation area. In 2017, Ryde School decided to ignore this advice. Rather than apply for a 2-storey building, which would have lessened the visual impact and allayed many of the privacy concerns of neighbours, it decided to proceed with a 3-storey proposal, which is completely out of keeping. We believe it wants the extra floor space to make the numbers, in brackets, aka pounds, work. Everything else is secondary. It appears this is a prima facie case of give them an inch, they take a mile. Compromise, it's not a word it either welcomes or recognises. We wonder if this attitude is taught to its students, in which case the school motto should change from ut prosim, to be of service, to avarita bonum, greed is good.
And here on the same subject is a letter from David Perkis of Ryde. Apart from the concerns previously raised over the boarding house application, environmental impact, noise, loss of amenity, unsuitability for both location and area, access, etc., there is the huge problem of traffic congestion at the Five Ways junction when pupils are dropped off and picked up from the school, which this plan does nothing to alleviate and will undoubtedly increase. Ryde School had the opportunity when designing and building the recently constructed Queen's Road classroom complex to facilitate a safe drop-off area within the site, but chose not to. The fact it has now found room, albeit by destroying the playing fields, to build this monstrosity is proof it could easily have done so. As a result, during term time, we have daily chaos with traffic lights, crossing patrol, bus stops, parents dropping off and coaches competing against each other, along with a disregard for double yellow lines in West Street, causing gridlock to form and in the town. Come on, Ryde School. Forget about generating more money from this unwarranted development and think about your pupils' safety. You can build a safe drop-off facility, retain playing fields and begin to be a good neighbour.
And moving on to Letter of the Week. Excuses wear a little thin. This is from Simon Bligh of Bembridge. You couldn't make it up, or could you? I receive regular Wight Link texts with their travel updates. I look forward to them. Below is a list of the recent excuses offered by Wight Link for a delay to their printed timetable. Our Fishbourne service is delayed by 25, 30, 25, 50, 60, 90 plus minutes. Delete as appropriate because it took longer than expected for large passenger groups to board the ferry. A member of the crew has been taken ill. We had an earlier electrical problem. We had a broken down vehicle on board. High volume of traffic. Low tides and a broken down vehicle. Lower than predicted tides. An incident with a passenger. An electrical problem at Gun Wharf. A mechanical problem. A broken down lorry on board. Harbour movements. An earlier technical issue. A large passenger group and high volume of traffic. Mechanical issues on an earlier sailing. Running out of space at the terminal for customers. A medical emergency. Cancellations due to overnight closure. Thanks to hard work of our crew, we've only had to cancel 2 sailings today, Saturday. We've run out of cheese and biscuits. OK, this one I made up. I have received a text with all of the above reasons and more in the past month. I've had many more than once. I wonder if they are employing Alistair Campbell to come up with even more imaginative reasons, or perhaps they are just terribly unlucky. Or maybe the fact that they have undertaken a massive building project at Portsmouth, and to a lesser extent in Fishbourne, that this has had a hugely disruptive effect. This is, in many ways, to be expected, and may even lead to a better service. Hope springs eternal. I don't wish to sound completely disingenuous, but maybe try that as an excuse or a reason sometimes. There may even be a kernel of truth in that one.
And we have, looking back now, 100 years ago, July the 28th, 1917. Dubbed, quote, a fictitious Frenchman, James Warder was charged with having made a false statement to officers upon arriving at Southampton. Mr. Warder, steward of the SS Aquitania, stationed in Cowes, pleaded guilty to claiming to be French, an oddly common occurrence at British ports. He said, "I am sorry. I was only having a game. I was acting drunk." He was fined 10 shillings or 7 days in detention. And also the future of Osborne Naval College was uncertain. With more than 400 naval cadets stationed there, The college was an intrinsic part of the East Cowes community, and its potential loss was lamented in the county press, as in the following quote: "This news will be read with regret by island people, by whom the establishment of such an important institution as the Naval College had been regarded as some compensation for the great loss involved in the discontinuation of Osborne as a royal residence upon the death of Queen Victoria. The college was opened by late King Edward in 1903 and would not officially close until the war in 1921.
75 years ago, on July 1942, more than 100 houses in Cowes were deemed unfit for habitation following a report from the Urban District Council. The report also stated the year had been a healthy one, with the number of notifiable diseases small and only one case of diphtheria. The infant mortality rate was also low, at 31 per 1,000, against the national average of 59. And a chronic shortage of materials presented a unique problem for Southern Vectis when the construction of a new bus stop was required. With no spare raw materials to hand, a request was submitted to Cowes Urban District Council to paint the bus stop signs on the pavements instead. The request was granted.
50 years ago, July the 29th, 1967, the County Council was criticised following a report from both Houses of Parliament concerning the scheme to build a fixed bridge over the River Yar at Yarmouth. Plans to replace the existing opening one were opposed by the Royal Yachting Association, Royal Solent Yacht Club and the Yarmouth Harbour Commissioners, along with many other local groups. They objected on the grounds that the new bridge would be built 500 feet upstream and would make it impossible for larger craft to navigate the upper reaches of the river during high tide. Early indications of the recently electrified Island Railway were that profits were up for British Rail. Island Rail manager Reginald Streeter said the new line was proving very popular, but due to a signal failure between Sandown and Shanklin, the time efficiency figure had dropped from 100% to 93%.
25 years ago, on July 25th, 1992, proposals for a Medina bridge linking East and West Cowes moved a step closer when county councillors accepted an environmental statement and agreed to submit a planning application for the scheme. Assistant County Surveyor Eric Maudsley said the most significant effect would be the visual impact and noise levels. He added, tree planting and landscape programme would help disguise the structure and restore the wildlife habitat of the area. And, same time, Lake lived up to its name during a torrential downpour, said to be the worst thunderstorm for 20 years. Following the storm, a 45-yard expanse of water up to 18 inches deep covered the high street and pavements. Shopkeepers worked together to stem the flood as best they could, but there were angry complaints that buses refused to slow down, sending a 4-foot wash into doorways, defeating makeshift damming efforts.
And 10 years ago, July the 27th, 2007, the efforts of green-fingered locals paid off when their northward patch beat off rivals Colburn and Yarmouth to be named Callor Village of the Year for England, as well as being named overall winner at the award ceremony at Key Arts. Northwood picked up a clutch of cash prizes and certificates for winning the information communication, young people and community life categories, with competitor Colburn winning the older people and business category. And there's one other little note at the top, looking back 10 years ago. The controversial cone at St Mary's Hospital enjoyed a facelift for its 10th anniversary. Although its erection put many islanders in a spin, It never fulfilled its promise to rotate, and its coloured lights only worked involuntarily. The land-sea light cone was installed in March 1997 for around £55,000, £31,550 of which came from the National Lottery and private sources, including the Arts Council of England. It was commissioned from artist Lillian Libyan by Healing Arts, the charity which promoted healing through the arts.
And on to Wight memories. MP ousted over harbour drama. I remember this. In 1974, it all went spectacularly wrong for Mark Woodnutt. He'd been the island's MP for 15 years, regularly returning large majorities in one of the safest Tory seats in the country. In 1970, that majority was 17,000, but just about 4 years later, he lost his seat by nearly 8,000 votes. The cause of his sensational downfall was the Bembridge Harbour affair. Many will have heard of it, but few know the details. Surely, though, the county press reported the affair in great detail? Well, no. As a matter of fact, it did not. Like many newspapers, then and now, the county press took a political stance, and until 1973, it was an unashamed Conservative newspaper signed up to support that party. Consequently, if Mr. Woodnutt was ever to be criticised, it was not going to be within its pages. His demise began with the closing of the Bembridge to Brading railway line in 1953. British Railways owned the harbour, plus 283 acres of surrounding land, and wanted to sell it. The Isle of Wight County Council set up 2 committees to find a buyer. Mr. Woodnutt chaired one and sat on the other. Their meetings, held in private and not minuted, recommended a syndicate should be formed to purchase the site. Mr. Woodnutt then gathered some friends and colleagues together to form such a syndicate. His role was portrayed simply as that of a go-between who would help the harbour pass to a group, who had no intention of acquiring the property for their personal benefit. It should not be allowed to pass into the hands of some speculator. In 1968, the syndicate paid £24,000 for the harbour, a sum described by the Sunday Times in 1972 as a bargain for them and an expensive deal for the taxpayer. Of that £24,000, only £14,000 was payable up front, the rest standing on loan. Eyebrows were raised when, just 18 months later, the syndicate recouped their entire outlay by selling just the station buildings for £16,500. Eyebrows were arched even more when it was revealed in 1966 that Mr. Woodnutt had quietly become a director of the company. By 1970, the harbour was effectively run by Mr. Woodnutt and his friend Major Selwyn, and in Company House documents they now valued their £24,000 investment at £150,000. General unease began to grow about Mr. Woodnutt promoting the syndicate's case so keenly in 1962, only for him to jump quietly on the board later as a director.
The affair became a major talking point on the island and eventually came to the attention of the BBC's nationwide programme. Mr. Woodnutt agreed to an interview filmed in his garden. He was asked a series of well-informed questions he found impertinent, and eventually brought the interview to a halt, angrily throwing his microphone to the ground and walking off camera. It was a fatal mistake. The interview caused a sensation, and from that moment on Mr. Woodnutt's career began to unravel. Viewers who may have felt that something underhand was afoot had their suspicions confirmed, while many who had given him the benefit of the doubt now withdrew it. However, the county press report of the interview mentioned nothing of the accusations levelled in it, but concentrated instead on what Mr. Woodnutt called the deplorable behaviour of the BBC. Readers who had not seen the interview were left wondering just exactly what the deplorable behaviour was. Amazingly, due to its bureaucratic ways, the BBC still possesses a written transcript of the interview and provided a copy. For copyright reasons, the BBC insists only a précis can appear. Quote, the report is introduced by nationwide presenter Michael Barrett as a disturbing story. The interviewer, Lynn Lewis, asked Mr. Woodnutt why £10,000 of the £16,500 received for the station was diverted to a syndicate members rather than being spent on dredging as promised. Locals claim no silt has been removed from the harbour, only shingle, which has been sold on. They are shocked to learn the syndicate consists of not one but two companies, the site having been shared out between the Bembridge Harbour Improvement Company, BHIC, and Yarland Properties. Mr. Woodnutt refuses to disclose the price paid for the harbour, commenting some people are, quote, too damn lazy to find out themselves from company records. Lewis checks. The figure is not there. Mr. Woodnutt claimed there were no other prospective purchasers, but Lewis revealed that there were, including a higher bid of £35,000, which for some reason was not considered by British Rail. Mr. Woodnutt angrily said he was not exactly a philanthropist. The frustrated bidder of £35,000 was speechless when told that the harbour sold for £24,000. Mr. Woodnutt said he was going to complain about Lewis, saying he had been bowled a bloody fast ball, and threw his microphone to the ground. Walking away, he said he couldn't carry on the interview tomorrow or the next day, and then asked Lewis, "Are you taking all this down?" There the item ends. A year later, in a council debate, Stephen Ross, the then Liberal candidate, said, to criticise Mr. Woodnutt and Major Selwyn, supported as they are by a powerful weekly newspaper, is a task not undertaken lightly. Mr. Woodnutt took very active part in the Finance Committee. Was it intended all along he would later join the syndicate? Is it in the best interest of this council that it has its two most influential members, that they should be so deeply involved in planning matters? The Sunday Times revealed BHIC only wanted everything below high water mark, also almost exclusively mud and silt, while Yarland Properties owned everything above, that is, large amounts of land and buildings. The division was crucial. The terms of sale allowed the council to compulsorily purchase the harbour, if neglected, but the division of the property between two companies now meant only the silted-up harbour would be available to them, the lucrative real estate having been stowed away beyond their reach in Yarland Properties. According to the Sunday Times of April the 16th, 1972, the British taxpayer lost thousands, though precisely why is still not clear. British Rail declines to comment. Shortly after that, Yarland applied for planning permission to build 120 houses on the land. The Sunday Times reported, had they gained permission, the site would be worth almost £250,000. After a public inquiry, permission was refused. The affair continued to haunt Mr. Woodnutt. In July 1973, MP Willie Hamilton told the Commons he is deeply involved in the manner in which the land was sold to a syndicate of which he was a representative. It reeks of corruption and racketeering. The island's voters agreed and delivered their damning verdict in the general election of 1974. Just 6 months later, Mr. Woodnutt died, aged 55. His Times obituary reported, quote, his friends say he never recovered from his shattering defeat at the general election.
And Max Minghella is following in Dad's footsteps. Actor Max Minghella is following in the filmmaking footsteps of his famous father. The late Anthony Minghella won 9 Oscars for The English Patient, the war drama he wrote and directed. Max is now making his directional debut with Teen Spirit, a feature film, mainly set on the Isle of Wight. It's coming-of-age drama about Violet, a shy girl who dreams of becoming a pop star. Lead actress is Elle Fanning, whose character is an underdog who longs to become a singer and escape her dysfunctional family in Eastern Europe. Shooting is currently underway in London, with a crew due to come to the island and to go to Canada.
And we have My View with Catherine James. On the evening of Wednesday, April the 10th, 1991, my landlady and I went to St All Saints Church Hall, Ryde, to hear the Isle of Wight Electronic Organ Society's guest organist, Penny Whedon. My diary entry of the day describes how the hall was packed out with old people. It goes on to say, we were introduced to Penny's organ and its effects. It was quite stunning. Once the introduction was over, Penny started her recital with a Blackpool melody. There's no business like show business. Oh, I do like to be beside the seaside, etc. This was followed by highlights from the musical Oklahoma and some classical tunes. I noted Penny was dressed in floaty chiffon scarves attached to her by gold braiding. Alas, we didn't stay for the full programme. My companion fidgeted throughout the first half, and we left during the interval, despite having bought tickets for the raffle. Looking back, I can't believe we didn't hang about. The prizes included a plastic scoop and a hamper of parsnips. And this, dear reader, was what passed as entertainment back in the dark days of the early 1990s. I had moved here from Pompey, the dizzy lights of which seemed positively cosmopolitan compared to all I could find to do on that drizzly night in April. I was unhappy. The island was in the doldrums and the weather was miserable. Not even that swelling organ could raise the corners of my mouth. Fast forward to July 2017. The choice of cultural offerings on the island has become almost overwhelming. In my hometown at Ryde, there's so much stuff going on through the season it's hard to keep up. Ryde Arts Festival, Mardi Gras, Scooter Rally, Illuminated Carnival, and a couple of weeks ago the town on the beach hosted the island's first Pride. While some of you were reliving your own memories of the 1990s with stereo MCs at Rhythm Tree, I was helping paint the whole world with a rainbow. Well, Ryde at least. Isle of Wight Pride was a sellout. The Glitterati were in attendance, and I danced the night away in my electric light-up sneakers in the resuscitated balcony. When my shoe batteries finally went flat at midnight, like Cinderella, I left the party because the next day was Ryde Slide. I don't know about you, but I can barely keep up with all this fun. Recalling my night at the organ recital, I'm delighted to see how far the island has come. The creativity, entrepreneurialism, and occasional brass-necked audacity has brought us Fee Fringe, Open Studios, the Wood Fair, and the Isle of Wight Literary Festival. Hell, someone's even making a living selling hampers of parsnips.
And following on, by Jim Gibbons, Primal Pursuits Are Still a Delight. I would like to share with you a piece of pure reasoning which has passed from generation to generation for 2,000 years. Because it's famous, many of you will have seen it before, and I hope you will enjoy revisiting it. For the others, I cannot guarantee you will see it with the same awe and delight as I did. Some do, some don't, but it won't take more than 10 minutes of your time. It concerns prime numbers. Oops, lost half my readership. Despite not having our system of recording numbers, the ancient Greeks were great at maths and knew all the integers were either prime numbers or products of prime numbers. 10, for instance, is the product of 2 and 5. But nothing divides 5 without remainder, except 1 and 5 itself, so 5 is a prime, as is 2. The first few prime numbers are 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, 13, 17, 19, 23, 29. They do not form a very orderly sequence, which fascinated people then and now. The ancient Greeks, the rich ones that is, most of them were slaves who had no time for such things, as the much vaunted Athenian democracy did not reach down to the helots, knew a simple but time-consuming method of deciding whether a number was prime. Basically, you had to divide it in turn by all the numbers below it to see if any divided it without remainder. If there are no such factors, the number is prime. So they could and did make lists of primes up to, say, 1,000, and they could see the primes were very common among the lower numbers and less so in the higher reaches. They wanted to know whether they went on forever, or whether there was only a finite number of them, in which case it would be possible to make a complete list. Euclid gives the answer. Suppose there are a finite number and we make a list. He knew, of course, it might take longer than a lifetime and might need more writing materials than existed, but he defined the process. Suppose we now multiply all the primes together. The result we can call the product, and is by definition divisible by all the known primes. It is also many times bigger than the largest prime. Suppose we add 1 to the product. Clearly, the result is not divisible by any of the known primes, as such a division would result in the remainder 1. Now, either that number is a prime or it is not. If it is, we've disproved the original assumption in that we have found a higher prime than is in the list. If it's not a prime, what factors divide it? Clearly, none of those in our list, so it must be divisible by some prime greater than all of those in the list. So again, we have proved there is a prime greater than those in the list. The proof doesn't give us that greater prime number, but it proves that there is always another one greater than any list we can make.
And here we have a long road to finding brain tumour cure. An Isle of Wight scientist is at the forefront of pioneering brain tumour research. Jeff Pilkington, a professor of cellular and molecular neuro-oncology, who lives at Kite Hill, Wootton, heads up a £1 million a year research centre based at Portsmouth University. His team is working to find new drugs and develop innovative treatments, and ultimately to find a cure. The centre's pioneering work includes isolating the defective mitochondrial DNA within cancer cells to change their behaviour, to stop them growing and spreading, and to make them less resistant to drugs. Jeff, who has worked in the field since 1971, appearing on documentaries and advising Emmerdale and Coronation Street storyline writers, in addition to his research, said dedicated centres with core funding rather than quick fix 3-year project grants for individual researchers would help translate findings into new treatments. He recently captained an Isle of Wight health team on the TV quiz show Eggheads. It takes a huge amount of time for changes to come about. The gold standard for decades has been a combination of neurosurgery, radiotherapy and drug treatment, said Jeff, 67. We are trying to manipulate the behaviour of the cancer cells to give patients longer to live, but also to improve their quality of life. That's the key thing. With less toxic and gruelling treatment, that quality of life improves hugely. The core funding for the Portsmouth Centre, the largest of its kind in the country, is provided by Brain Tumour Research. Appealing to the government for more funding, the charity said it was, quote, unacceptable, end of quote. Brain tumours kill more people under 40 than any other cancer, yet receive just 1% of national spend on cancer research. Director of Fundraising Robin Meltzer said, we need that some awareness raising we have had for other cancers, such as breast or testicular, which has resulted in better treatment and survival rates. We are different from most charities in that we provide that core funding, and we want to show our supporters we have the best people in the world working at Portsmouth. They are at the forefront of finding a cure. For information, visit www.braintumorresearch.org.
And on to other items. Northwood's Cows Week Fun, afternoon teas and live entertainment are just some of the things on offer at Northwood House and Park during Lendy Cows Week. The Classic Boat Museum will stage an exhibition about the Admiral's Cup in the library, while morning coffees and afternoon teas from Wight Vintage will be available on the South Lawn. Live entertainment will be on the Lawn Lounge, and the Gin Festival returns for its second year with gins from around the world. Now this year is Club Balearia, the alternative late-night venue, open from 10:30 p.m. until late tomorrow, Saturday, and Wednesday through to next Saturday, August 5th. Swallows and Amazons will be showing at the Outdoor Cinema on Sunday. On Tuesday there will be 2 performances of Alice Through the Looking Glass. Falconry displays, classic cars and free climbing will be available throughout the weekend. Bond's Victorian Fun Fair will also be in the park.
And we have some information about the Chail Show, which is on Saturday the 5th and Sunday the 6th of August, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. Chail Recreation Ground, children go free. There's a kids zone, horticultural marquee, live music, arts and crafts, live action arena, farmers market. And that's www.thechailshow.co.uk.
And it's Isle of Wight Asian Day at New Close Cricket Ground. This Sunday, enjoy Asian cuisine, traditional costume and dance, as well as a Miss Asian Isle of Wight beauty pageant at the much anticipated Isle of Wight Asian Day, a first on the island. Everyone is invited to soak up the ambience at New Close County Cricket Ground from 11 a.m. until 8 p.m. There will be a bar open from noon and plenty of delicious dishes to tuck into. There will be performances from Filipiniana dancers from Nottingham and Derby, as well as the island's very own Dance Vibes. Guests can also enjoy Bollywood and Bangla dance and song, Filipino, British and Malaysian artists, and a selection of national costumes, evening and formal gown wear. For this and so much more, head to New Close. It's a free event. If you'd like more information on this exciting new venture, call organiser Erin on 0751 480 5961.
Also, we have a note here, sign up for Isle of Wight Day Parade. More than 2,000 people have signed up to take part in the Isle of Wight Day Big Parade so far. The event takes place in Ryde at 1 p.m. on Saturday, September the 23rd. Clubs, businesses, schools, musicians and dancers have signed up, and there is still time to get involved with the annual celebration. A party will be held at the Simeon Street Recreation Ground following the parade, where there will be entertainment, food stalls and more. Parade applications must be received by Friday, August the 18th.
And an opening party is advertised at ABBA Cheek Wave 105's Steve Powers DJ set and the Cheeky Girls. Tickets are available from over the counter at the County Press Shop Newport and Osborne's Menswear at Ryde, or online at jackupthe80s.co.uk, and it's on the 22nd of August, 7 p.m. till late, and costs £10. Kids aged 12 and under go free. Can't wait.
We have a note here, police take steps to stop parties on beach. Police have prevented a number of parties planned to take place on Gurnard Beach. Officers said they took the action on several occasions over the past few months after intelligence suggested people planned to unlawfully use the beach and planned to host a DJ. A few weeks ago, a number of vehicles were damaged after a party was held, police said. The parish council acknowledged the problem at a meeting last month and described the event as raves. However, Sergeant Jed Armitage from the West Wight neighbourhood policing team said the minor incidents were not classified as raves. We have disrupted some planned parties when intelligence has suggested unlawful use of the beach, such as an intention to include a DJ. We take the concerns of residents seriously and will continue to work alongside other agencies to tackle any problems that are identified to us in relation to unlicensed music events.
And that's the end of our report from the county press. So it's goodbye from Sonara.
And goodbye from Barry. Both of us wishing you a very happy weekend. I hope you're not troubled too much with violent downpours of rain. Thank you.
This is the BBC.
This is In Touch, the magazine programme for people like me who are blind or partially sighted. I'm Peter White. Thanks for downloading this week's edition. Good evening. Like it or not, the so-called digital revolution is here to stay. There's now technology around which can offer blind and partially sighted people alternative ways of doing many of the things which have traditionally caused us a good deal of grief. And tonight we're going to feature some of the latest developments in helping us get around, for example, find what we're looking for, or use the equipment that we already have more easily. And it's very down-to-earth stuff, some of this. If you want to avoid, for example, dousing your spaghetti bolognese in beetroot rather than tomatoes, until recently you didn't have many options. You could arrange your tins with extreme care, you could find a way of labelling, or you could locate someone who could see. But suddenly there are many other ways which don't involve braille skills, the memory of an elephant, or having a constant stream of sighted friends tramping through your kitchen. The aim is to give you an overview of what's now possible. Whether you use it or not is down to you and your circumstances. To help us, two experts who definitely come into the category of enthusiasts. We know some of you are exasperated. Our experts are Jackie Brown, lives in Northern Ireland. She is the incoming chair of the BCAB, the British Computer Association of the Blind. Dave Williams is with me in the studio. He's a freelance trainer on technology and he'd describe himself as a digital adopter. Let's start with just getting around. Everyone knows about dogs and white canes and how they help us navigate in terms of avoiding obstacles. More recently, though, we began to see the development of equipment which you could carry with you, similar to the now familiar sat-nav. Jackie, just explain the methods blind people are increasingly using to navigate.
Well, Peter, the iPhone and the Android devices are the most popular means now that a lot of blind people are using to get around from A to B.
And they're using speech to do the kind of things that sighted people are tending to do all the time now.
Yeah, that's right. Coming over here in the car, I had my iPhone running maps and I put the full address of the BBC studios in and I was able to listen to the instructions I was going along.
And that was so that you could keep control of the situation in a way. It was like looking out of the window in a way.
Yeah, kind of. I turned voiceover off because the Maps app is self-voicing, so it was giving me all the directions. And I was asking my driver as well, and he was saying, yes, this is correct, that's right, that's right.
And voiceover, that's the screen reader that actually reads to you and says what you hear.
Yes.
And how much do you use it?
If I'm going to go around on a bus somewhere or I'm going to go in a car, then it's really useful because I just like to know roughly where I am and you get an expected time of arrival as well.
Dave Williams, I think you use it a lot more, don't you?
Absolutely, yeah. So I use a range of apps on my phone, so similar kind of idea. Rather than using a dedicated device, I've downloaded software to my phone, and I quite like some of the specialist apps that have been written particularly for blind and partially sighted people. So they would include things like Blind Square, which gives you information about your surroundings. So it's kind of like looking around as you're moving along. You know, you find out what's in your immediate vicinity. And then another app I use quite regularly is the RNIB Navigator, and that's a subscription-based one. But what I find is that actually no one app really does it all. So sometimes it works to have two apps running at the same time. So you'll hear, I went out at the weekend with my family when we were taking a trip into town. We're going out to do a bit of shopping, and I was on the bus, and we wanted to know when we were getting to our bus stop. And what I found was that the one app, you'll hear the male voice is the RNIB Navigator. That's telling me what side of the road each of the junctions is on. With the side roads, as we're passing them, it will tell me on the left, on the right. But it was actually Blind Square that gave me the name of the street that I wanted first. So often these apps are giving you slightly different sets of information, and sometimes you need to use them in combination.
Can we hear a bit of that?
Ransom Avenue right. Bath Road at Dunkirk Way. Stanley Street left. A38, 1 o'clock and City Wharf Road 7 o'clock. Silver Street car park 85 feet behind.
St. Nicholas Street and Trinity Street.
There we go, St. Nicholas Street, this is the one. All right then, thank you, driver. Thank you.
Right, so that's a lot to concentrate on, isn't it, if you're using two apps at once?
Oh, definitely. You don't start with that. You probably start with one app. And you do need to give it a bit of time and attention, and perhaps practice somewhere that you already know to get a feel for the kinds of information it'll give you.
Jack, I mean, you are not necessarily that keen on using a phone when you're navigating, are you?
If you've got a dog or a cane, or you're carrying something, it can be really clumsy, and you need an earpiece or bone conduction headphones on so that you can hear, because particularly in a busy area where there's lots of traffic going on and stuff, you really need to be able to hear what your phone's saying. And I think for some people they might find that very disorientating, to have the information going on in your ears and then you're listening to your whereabouts. I really use my spatial awareness a lot, and I would find that a bit off-putting, and have done, and I just find it a lot easier to just use my cane or the dog and just walk and not worry about the GPS. But I do appreciate that for some people, you know, it is really important, and it does give you independence.
Definitely make sure that you've got a battery pack and the right kind of headphones. The other problem we had at the weekend when I was out with my wife Emma, who's also blind, it started to rain, and that made using the touchscreen really difficult.
Yeah, it is. That's the problem that I think for some people, certainly for myself, if you're on the move and you're trying to swipe or place your finger over the touchscreen, it can be really quite difficult. And you can get little keyboards, tiny little credit-sized keyboards that have some kind of tactile feedback. But it is a bit hit and miss sometimes when you're walking around. So, you know, there are lots of pitfalls to think about as well.
Jackie made a really good point there about, you know, the when you're trying to flick around on a touchscreen, and not everybody's comfortable with touchscreens. And one of the things that the standalone devices do is to give you buttons, which of course many people still want. Some of these devices are about the size of a phone again, so you're carrying another device around with you with another battery, obviously, which you need to charge. But there is that benefit that it's designed specifically for a blind person, and it will have buttons that will in some cases have tactile markings on them as well.
And let me just ask you both this very quickly. Aren't there lots of time when it's just quicker to ask someone, how do I get somewhere?
Well, that assumes that there's somebody. Yeah, well, exactly. That assumes that there is somebody available. There isn't always, and understanding the limitations is very important. These things are tools, you know, and you've got to have the right tool for the job. You've got to understand how it works, how to use it, and where its limitations are. It won't tell you, for example, if a restaurant is above a shop.
Right. Yeah. Up until now, we've been talking about, you know, big navigation, the outside world. But of course, there are often times in your own home, for instance, when you just need help identifying something. You know, those tins I was on about, for example, what's in them? Dave Williams, what's the range of methods for doing that?
we have apps like Be My Eyes that establish a video link with a sighted helper. So this is something that you can download to your phone, and then the sighted person on the other end, they can see from your camera what you can see, and then you have a real-time conversation with that person. And there was a lot of talk about that app a year or two ago. We've also got Be Specular, which has a kind of a sort of a mixed approach. So you take a photograph, just one photograph, and then you ask a question.
Well, I actually tried these out just a few minutes before we started to record the programme, and this is what happened. What I want to know is, what colour is this sweater?
Okay, well, we'll try that. So we need to take a picture. So I'm just going to point my camera of my phone at you.
Take a picture.
Okay.
Button. Uploading picture. Upload complete.
Okay, so it's uploaded the picture. So now I need to ask a question.
Double tap and hold to record your question. Button.
Right, what colour is this sweater?
Make a new request. Waiting for replies.
Okay.
One person replied. View reply. Button. Replies. Play reply. Button.
Play reply. So it's going to hear somebody's voice now.
Okay.
Play reply.
Hi, in the photograph it does look like a medium pale blue, but it could be grey. But I think by looking at your shirt, I'd say it's blue.
Okay, so the lady who told us that said it was a medium pale blue or a grey. Is that what you thought?
I think she's right, because I thought it was pale blue. I hoped it was pale blue, and I think it goes with this shirt, which what she seems to imply. Dave, was that fairly typical? Was that the sort of thing people use it for?
I guess so, yeah. And at least you're getting a human being telling you what's going on. So you can be reasonably confident, but then there may be some security issues that you might need to consider. Safeguarding issues, of course, if you're working with children. The other type of app that we use for recognition is something like AI Polyvision, which was on this programme previously. And that attempts to use software to work out what is in the field of view of the camera. So a lot of the social networking sites now, like Facebook and Twitter, they're starting to use this, and your phone as well will tell you, person sitting at desk wearing glasses or something like that. But you have to use your own judgment about whether or not you can trust it. So I would say that the human ones, where you actually have another person, tend to be a little bit more reliable, but maybe the ones that use an algorithm where it doesn't send an image away to somebody else are perhaps a little bit more private.
Jackie, what's your take on these?
I've tried them and I like them. I actually use a couple of the ones where you just take a picture and the phone uses its judgment, really, what it sees. So I've tried Tap Tap See. I think my favourite one is Cam Find. They're free apps, and I've had a lot of success with things like colours, if I want to know the colour of a garment. The other thing I find is really useful is if I want to identify if you buy several birthday cards or Christmas cards for somebody, different people, and you actually want to identify whose is whose, it actually tells you, and it describes the picture as well. I've had a lot of success with these.
Are these available on Android as well?
Yes, they are.
And what's happening now with these apps is that the methods that they're using to give you information tend to be sort of converging. So we recently heard about a new app in the States called the Seeing AI app, and hopefully it'll be available in the UK soon. And this uses a range of methods to try and acquire information for you.
Jackie, Dave mentioned the privacy issue. Is that, as a woman, is that something that bothers you?
Well, I don't have great concerns about it, because I think you've got to use your common sense. I mean, if you're going to walk around sort of with basically very little or nothing on, I think you're asking for trouble. But I think if you're sensible and you don't ask about sensitive information like credit cards and things like that are very personal, then I think it's, let's face it, it's Big Brother's watching you really out there all the time now with this stuff.
But then conversely, you might want some personal information that actually you don't feel comfortable asking somebody you know. So that's where an app can really save the day.
Now, of course, often what you actually need is just an assistant, not a live one that you have to humour and pay and be nice to, but one which will just offer you help when you need it. And one of the things that people still love to show off are the assistants which respond to voice commands, the kind of thing where they say ask whoever it happens to be. Well, now they too are becoming more sophisticated, and once they're set up, you don't need any skills to operate them. And also, these are not designed specifically with blind people in mind. They just happen naturally to work for us. Jackie, explain about them, because I think you have 2 of these, don't you?
I do, yeah. I have one of each. I bought the Amazon Echo first, and then I bought the Google Home. And they are slightly different in what they tell you, different things. I've recorded a couple of bits and pieces to let you hear an example of.
But, I mean, and we'll hear that in a minute, but just give us an idea of the kind of things that you would use that for. I should say, one of the Amazon one, we did feature on the programme last year, but remind people what they do as a genre.
Well, they are devices that connect to the internet, so they technically don't have any memory in them themselves. So everything they get is from an internet connection, so you have to have a Wi-Fi connection to be able to use them. And they are basically digital assistants that you speak to, and there is a wake word that you say when you want to ask the assistant something, and then hopefully you'll get the answer to what you're looking for. So in the case of Google Home, you'll say, "OK, Google, tell me flights between Belfast and Manchester from the 24th to the 26th of November."
Round-trip flights from Belfast to Manchester leaving November 24th and coming back November 26th start at £80. Would you like me to track prices for the cheapest flight on those dates? You'll receive emails with updates.
No.
No problem.
I find them very friendly women.
And it's not just about asking questions, is it? They will do things for you.
Yes, they will indeed. They can access your calendar if you've set it up so that you have a busy life, busy household, and they will, do lots of different things for you. You can add to shopping lists, you can get them to play music, you can get them to stream radio stations, podcasts. So there's a whole raft of things that they do.
And a great thing, of course, from a blind person's perspective is that you can be doing something else with your hands. So you might be cooking, or you might be washing up, or reading something in Braille, or whatever it is. You haven't got to go and find it and touch it and interact with it. You can just call out to it, and they work across the room. Also, in my house, we love it because, as I mentioned earlier, my wife and I, we're both blind, but my 8-year-old son, he's fully sighted, and we find that it works just as well for him as it does for us.
I'll say, "Alexa, what's up?"
Hello, here's what's up. On your calendar, there is Master Builders Holiday Club 2017 tomorrow morning at 10 a.m.
Arlo, what sort of things do you normally ask?
Tell me facts about brown bears.
The brown bear is one of the 2 largest terrestrial carnivores alive today, rivaled only by its close cousin, the polar bear.
I didn't know that it was a close cousin of the polar bear either.
Oh, well, there you are. Right, go on, Mum.
How many grams in 4 ounces?
4 ounces is 113.4 grams.
So really, I mean, this is where I suppose the tie-up with equipment that can be both popular with sighted people and blind people, this is a relatively new development, isn't it, really?
I think the idea of you releasing a device that doesn't have a screen on it, that its primary interface is voice, is interesting for blind people, because suddenly, you don't have to go and switch on some accessibility thing or know about screen readers or anything like that. It just works. And yes, there is some setup involved. You do have to get it connected to your network at home, and that might need the help of a friend or family member or somebody like that. But once it's up and running, you can just talk to it.
Now, I made it clear that you two are both enthusiasts. I mean, you wouldn't be experts if you weren't enthusiasts. Jackie, do you have sympathy for people who just are finding this really overpowering in a way?
Yes, it is. If you're not into technology and you're thinking, well, where do I start? What's the best thing to buy? Or, that there is such a lot out there. And if you're standing on the edge and you're thinking, I don't know where to start with this, I'd love to be able to do such and such, but I just don't know where to start.
It is really important to say that there is help available, not least of which from the British Computer Association of the Blind. You've also got your local blind society. Admittedly, some of those are more teched up than others. And then just ask around, friends and family. Chances are they're already using some of this stuff.
That's it for today's programme. I told you that we couldn't cover everything, but we want to hear from you too. Are you using this kind of equipment? What do you do with it? And if you don't, what's putting you off? We'd also like to find out what your non-tech solutions are for sorting your socks and not ruining your spaghetti bolognese. You can call our action line on 0800 044 044 for 24 hours after the programme. Email in touch at bbc.co.uk. Dave Williams, Jackie Brown, thank you both very much indeed. And from me, Peter White, producer Lee Kumatat and the team, goodbye.
This is Chris.
And this is Pauline.
Reading out the questions for the client consultation survey. This is advanced information in order to give you more time to consider your responses. Client consultation. Established in 1895, the Isle of Wight Society for the Blind, IWSB, is one of the oldest independent charities on the Isle of Wight. We are inviting clients and prospective clients to have their say and identify their priorities in a consultation exercise that will help determine Isle of Wight Society for the Blind future plans and activities. Our continuing purpose is to provide practical, emotional and educational support for visually impaired people, their families and carers, and promote awareness of the needs of those affected by sight loss amongst the general public.
We strive to help people maintain independence, learn new skills and participate in social, physical and educational activities to reduce loneliness and isolation. Currently, we organise weekly coffee mornings, educational talks and seminars, craft clubs, weekly swimming sessions, walking and golf, a visiting and befriending service, a weekly audio version of the Isle of Wight County Press, and a library of audio books. To help ensure the services we provide in the future meet the needs of our existing and potential clients, the Society will use the survey to guide and develop our strategic plans. With your help, we can ensure that our resources are targeted wisely to meet your needs. Thank you very much for participating in this survey. Your feedback is invaluable in guiding our future.
Do you currently use any of the services supported by the Isle of Wight Society for the Blind? Your answer is either yes or no.
If you answered no, please go to question 3. If you answered yes, please rate how positive each have on your well-being under the following. And the headings are not applicable, not at all, slightly positive, moderately positive, very positive, extremely positive. This is Strollers Walking Group, Dolphin Swimming Group, Millbrook House Weekly Coffee Morning.
Bembridge Monthly Coffee Morning.
Knighton Monthly Coffee Morning.
Freshwater Monthly Coffee Morning.
Owls, Millbrook House, meeting with guest speaker.
Knitters and Natterers, social group at Millbrook House.
Striders Walking Group.
Talking News.
Audio Library.
Newsletter.
Millbrook House Resource Room of aids and equipment for the visually impaired.
Millbrook House Braille Document Production.
Millbrook House as a point of contact for information for the visually impaired.
Isle of Wight Society for the Blind Volunteer Home Visit Service.
Opportunities to volunteer for IWSB.
The Golf Group.
And the 10-pin Bowling Group. Please rate how positive an impact the following services might have on your well-being if IWSB were able to coordinate them for clients. As with our existing provision, the Society covers any general administrative, organisational costs and room use at Millbrook House. Categories are, and we'd like you to say not at all, or slightly positive, moderately positive, very positive, extremely positive.
age-appropriate exercise classes such as yoga.
Other sport or activity taster days.
Support to participate in a sponsored challenge event, e.g. the Isle of Wight Cycle Challenge, walk, run, marathon, skydive, etc., to raise awareness and funds for the society.
Craft taster sessions.
Monthly food and drink tasting group with sessions at Millbrook House.
Monthly food and drink tasting group with sessions at other venues.
Quarterly day trips to Isle of Wight heritage sites or tourist attractions.
Quarterly day trips to the mainland heritage sites or tourist attractions.
Holidays and short breaks organised by the Society, supported with the provision of sighted volunteers to assist with guiding, not care provision.
Monthly music group to include singing, listening, an occasional concert or live performance visits.
Quarterly storytelling or poetry recital group, your chance to spin a good yarn or share favourite poems.
Social activities closer to your home.
Introduction to Technology course of perhaps 6 weekly sessions looking at computers, iPads, mobile phones and apps for the visually impaired.
Monthly technology group to keep abreast of development in computers, iPads, mobile phones and apps for the visually impaired.
Quarterly technology group to keep abreast of development in computers, iPads, mobile phones and apps for the visually impaired.
Evening/weekend social group for 65+ year olds.
Evening, weekend social group for 50 to 64 year olds.
Evening, weekend social group for 36 to 49 year olds.
Evening, weekend social group for 19 to 35 year olds.
Evening social activities for young people aged 16 to 18 years.
Evening social club for 11 to 15 year olds.
Evening social club for 7 to 10 year olds.
Quarterly evening social meeting at Millbrook House for parents, guardians, carers of young people with visual impairment, with separate activities arranged for any accompanying young people.
School summer holiday activities or social event for visually impaired young people and their parents, guardians or carers.
Dancing.
Please add any further suggestions of services or activities you would like the Society to provide.
Other suggestions. Please suggest any sport or activities you would like to try. Please identify the challenge event or activity you would be interested in. Please suggest any craft activities you would like to try. Please indicate here the styles of music you would enjoy.
In relation to social and recreational activities, please indicate whether you would generally prefer activities targeted and arranged specifically for those with visual impairment, or activities that are open to both sighted and visually impaired people where reasonable adjustments are made to accommodate the particular needs of the visually impaired.
Visual impairment aside, on a scale of 0 to 10, where 10 is very healthy, how healthy do you feel at the moment?
Being connected is more than having a network of friends and family. It could include being connected to your community, having the ability to access services or help when you need it, and being digitally connected. On a scale of 0 to 10, where 10 is very connected, how connected to others do you feel?
On a scale of 0 to 10, where 10 is very confident, how confident are you using technology, the internet in everyday life? For example, using email, the internet, social media, online banking, shopping, etc.
How do you find out about the following? The headings are printed leaflets or posters, word of mouth, Isle of Wight Society for the Blind website, other internet, social media, radio, talking news or other, and then please specify. Local events, social activities. Contact details for organisations and services for the visually impaired. Health information relating to sight loss. Other health services and information. And travel.
About Isle of Wight Society for the Blind. What, if anything, do you know about Isle of Wight Society for the Blind? How would you describe Isle of Wight Society for the Blind to others?
Would you favour a name change of the society to promote a more inclusive organisation that supported those with visual impairment? For example, Isle of Wight Vision. Your answer is yes or no.
Would you like to suggest a new working name for the society that would reflect a more inclusive and forward-looking ethos? Please remember that this survey and all responses are completely anonymous. Information gathered is purely to enable us to better understand the needs of visually impaired islanders to inform our future plans and services.
Please indicate which age range you are in. Under 10 years, 11 to 15 years, 16 to 18 years, 19 to 35 years, 36 to 49 years, 50 to 64 years, 65 to 74 years, 75 to 84 years, 85 plus years, or you've the option prefer not to say.
What is your gender?
What is your current status? Please tick all that apply. Are you a full-time student of any age? A part-time student of any age? Employed? Homemaker? Unemployed? Semi-retired? Or retired?
Do you volunteer for any organisation? Yes? No? Prefer not to say? If yes, which organisation?
Please tell us the first part, that is the 4 digits, of your postcode.
Please let us have any comments, questions or concerns.
Please identify if you have completed this and independently, firstly as a visually impaired client or prospective client, or as a volunteer, carer, guardian or visually impaired parent.
Thank you for completing this survey.